Growing up, success wasn't something you earned. It was something that was demanded, like an order. It wasn't celebrated, it was expected. Dad was a man of ambition. His definition of success always a straight line. Work hard, be first, win. There was no room for mistakes or missteps, and there sure as hell wasn't any space for doing what you wanted. He never asked what we liked or who we wanted to be. He told us who we were meant to be. Paige, the perfect kid, was groomed for Yale. Me? I was the one who couldn't fit the mold. While Paige was in a suit, head buried in textbooks or shaking hands with CEOs, I was in the garage, tearing apart old laptops, trying to figure out how the hell they worked. Or buried in code, making some half-baked project run. I liked mechanics. I liked building things. I liked computers. The kind of things Dad would look at and shake his head, muttering about diversions. The first time I tried to show him something I'd worked on, I was 15. The school had a delivery fundraiser, and I built a route optimization script to save them time and money. It was clean, simple, worked like a charm. I was proud. I'd worked hard on it. But when I showed Dad, he skimmed it, barely looked up from his journal article. "Cool," he said. Then he turned back to his work. That was it. I should have known then, but it still stung. Paige got into Yale, though. That was different. There were champagne toasts and congratulatory speeches. My mom said, "Your father and I are so proud of you, sweetie." And the whole house lit up like a Christmas tree. Me? I got into a startup accelerator in Arizona, a program that could have helped me get my first real shot at building something. But when I told Mom, she didn't even smile. "Isn't that some pyramid scheme?" she asked, looking at me like I had a second head. It didn't matter that this was my chance. It didn't matter that the accelerator was filled with people who were hustling, building, trying to make something real. To her, it was just another one of my phases. One year, I came home with a first-place robotics trophy from a regional competition. It was one of those moments where I felt like maybe, just maybe, they'd see me. But Dad was on a call, and Mom didn't even look up. She saw the trophy in my hand, but instead of a high five or an ounce of recognition, she just said, "Leave it on the counter. We'll talk later." We never did. I got good at letting things slide, at learning to do my thing and keep it to myself. I started to realize they didn't want to hear it. They didn't want to hear who I was. So I stopped talking. Not out of spite, just survival. It was easier not to fight for their attention, easier not to try. That silence became my language. It wasn't that I'd stopped caring, I just stopped needing them to understand me. If they didn't want to see it, fine. I'd build it anyway. But it sure as hell didn't make it easier to forget. After high school, I gave community college a shot. 2 semesters. That was it. I was bored out of my mind, sitting in gen ed classes listening to some guy drone on about macroeconomics, while my laptop buzzed with projects I actually cared about. I'd already started doing back-end logistics software for a couple small warehouses in the area, one-off tools, inventory routing, scheduling systems. Nothing fancy, but it paid more than any part-time gig and gave me freedom. No one in my family asked why I dropped out, not once. I met Ivan on a job in Flagstaff. He was working contract for a distributor who needed a full overhaul on their route optimization setup. I was there wiring the back end and handling the ops stuff. He was the guy writing the code. I knew in 5 minutes the dude was smart as hell, raw, unfiltered talent, but had no clue how to talk to clients or pitch value. 2 weeks later, I called him up and said, "You keep coding, I'll handle the people." We shook hands over a paper plate of microwave taquitos in the back of his van. We moved into a trailer outside Reno. Rent was $200 a month if we paid cash. Freezing in the winter, boiling in the summer, didn't matter. We were building something. Nights blurred into mornings. Ivan would be on his 3rd energy drink, slouched over his laptop, muttering about algorithm loops. I'd be cold calling warehouses, chasing contracts, and emailing back clients who thought we were a 20-person team instead of 2 broke guys with 1 working coffee maker and a stack of frozen burritos. We picked up jobs no one else wanted. Last mile routing, warehouse delay management, fleet rescheduling systems. Most of it was ugly, but we learned fast. We'd take on a job, solve it, then repurpose the solution into something scalable. Every system we built taught us what we could automate next. TransCore was born out of that chaos. No investor decks, no glossy vision statements, just code, grit, and contracts. The first real breakthrough came from a mid-sized hub in Omaha. Their ops director was drowning in fuel costs and late deliveries. We gave them a tailored routing engine that cut their delivery costs by 19.6% in 2 months. After that, word spread, quietly but fast. We kept everything lean, hired slow, reinvested every dollar. We didn't upgrade the trailer until year 3, didn't take salaries until year 4. Every acquisition offer went straight to the trash. Didn't matter what the number was, we weren't building to sell. Meanwhile, back in Minnesota, my parents still thought I worked with trucks. At some point, Mom told someone I was in tech logistics, like it was some hobby I picked up after getting fired. Dad once asked me if I needed help applying to UPS. I didn't correct them. I could have, but it was easier not to. Explaining things to people who've already decided who you are? Waste of time. Ivan and I eventually moved into an actual office in Denver. 1,900 square feet, second floor, no elevator, still no press, still no interviews. We liked it that way. Our platform got sharper. We started developing predictive analytics models, delay forecasting, dynamic load balancing. Companies we used to cold call started calling us. But even then, when the invoices hit 6 figures and we had clients in 5 states, I still didn't tell my family what we were really doing. They didn't ask, and I didn't offer. Not because I was hiding, but because it didn't matter. By that point, I'd already learned what applause from them was worth. Nothing. I wasn't building for recognition. I was building because I knew I could, because it worked, because I believed in it. And that belief, that was the only thing that never let me down. 6 months ago, I got an email from Carter Alden. I recognized the name the second it popped up in my inbox. Carter Alden, VP at Stratnex, a major player in supply chain management. The same Carter who was engaged to Paige. The subject line was generic. Meeting request, strategic alignment discussion. At first, I stared at the email for a while. It wasn't the kind of thing I expected. The last time I'd heard from him, we'd exchanged a few polite hellos at family gatherings. Nothing more, but this was different. He wanted to meet. He wanted to talk strategy. My immediate thought, what the hell? I didn't rush to reply. I let it sit in my inbox for 2 days. Didn't even mention it to Ivan. I wanted to see how far it would go before someone figured out who I actually was. Carter had no idea I was Paige's brother. My name had never been tied to TransCore. I kept it that way on purpose. There were no press releases, no glossy articles about the company. It was just TransCore Systems, privately held, Denver-based. It worked for me. I was curious. Was he just looking to get some numbers for a business deal? Or was he trying to get something else? Something more personal? I wasn't sure. But I wasn't about to make the first move. Then the phone rang. It was Mom. She didn't waste time with small talk. "I'm just calling to remind you about Paige's engagement dinner," she said, like it was the most important thing in the world. "Wear a real jacket, Warren. Carter's family is very polished." I let the words wash over me. I knew the drill. Paige and Carter had been together long enough that they didn't need a huge dinner for anyone to see them as a perfect couple. But I also knew what Mom meant. She wasn't worried about my jacket. She was worried about the image, the polished version of our family. They had a way of doing things, a script they expected you to follow. I wasn't one for scripts. "Yeah, I'll be there," I said, not bothering to argue. It wasn't worth it. Just like the email, I'd let it sit and see where it went. I didn't mention Carter's request. Didn't see the point. Why would I tell Mom I was going to meet the guy who was engaged to her golden child? Why would I drop the bomb that I was running a multi-million-dollar company? I wasn't ready for that conversation. Hell, I didn't even know if I wanted it. But as the days ticked by, the thought gnawed at me. Would Carter recognize me? Would he figure it out the moment we sat down for the meeting? He'd probably read the company name and make the connection. Or maybe not. Maybe he'd just see me as another business guy looking for a deal. Either way, I was going to show up, just like I always did. Quiet, unassuming, waiting to see if anyone was actually paying attention. The dinner came, and I wore the jacket. Navy sport coat, clean shaven. Looked good enough for the occasion. I showed up late, as usual, slipping in at the edge of the table. Paige was in a designer dress. Carter in a tailored suit. They looked like they belonged in a magazine. But me? I wasn't part of their picture. Not really. So when Carter leaned across the table and asked about TransCore, it threw me off. I'd never expected it to go this far. The dinner was at one of those rooftop steakhouses, the kind where everything is sleek and polished. overlooking the river with a soft, golden light spilling over the glass railing. Champagne greeted us at the door, flutes clinking in the hands of people who'd already decided they were better than you. Name cards neatly arranged, everyone exactly where they were supposed to be. I was at the edge of the table, as usual. No one really expected me to be anywhere else. Carter's mom, in a cashmere wrap, had this air of perfect composure. Paige was dressed in something I couldn't even pronounce, all tailored lines and designer labels. They fit the mold. They were the ones everyone admired, and I was the guy who showed up, trying not to be seen. Clean-shaven, navy sport coat. A little out of place, but I wasn't about to stand out. The speeches started. Paige gave one, and I'll give her this. She could hold a room. The way she spoke about Carter, about their future, it was polished, planned, everything in its right place. Then my dad stood up for his toast. Dad always had something to say. His voice cut through the air like he was presenting at a board meeting. Something about family legacy, about how proud he was of Paige, how hard work paid off. I looked around the table while he spoke. My mom was teary-eyed, talking about Paige's grit. And it was like I wasn't even there. No mention of me, no recognition. Just that same empty seat at the table. The moment my dad sat down, I got the usual. Good to see you again, Warren, from my aunt. It was polite, distant, but not much more than that. Then Carter, the guy who seemed more interested in managing his family's expectations than asking anything real, leaned over. So, Warren, he said, what do you do exactly? I wasn't expecting the question, but I gave him a short answer. No need to get into the details. Logistics tech, I said. His eyes narrowed just a little, like he was trying to place me. Then it clicked. The recognition in his voice was sharp. Wait, Warren Donnelly? Are you with TransCore? I nodded. Yeah, I co-founded it. Carter blinked once, then twice. His eyes went wide. You're that Warren Donnelly? We've been negotiating with your team for 6 weeks. Your company's on our top 3 target list for Q4 acquisitions. I swear time stopped. The room froze. The air thickened, like everyone realized something they should have known all along, but hadn't wanted to admit. Mom lowered her glass of wine, almost spilling it in the process. Dad stared at me, looking like I'd spoken a different language. Paige's jaw tensed just a little, but she kept her mouth shut. For the first time, she was actually quiet. Her hand tightened around her wine stem, but she didn't say anything. Then Carter turned to her, eyes wide with genuine surprise. You never told me your brother founded TransCore? Paige's voice was small, almost like she was trying to explain something she couldn't understand herself. He never said. It wasn't said with bitterness, but with that resigned quiet that made me feel like she was apologizing for not knowing who I was, even though she probably had no idea how to ask. Carter's face shifted then. His expression softened, almost in awe. You've got a hell of a platform, he said, the words hanging in the air. Your optimization model alone is changing how we plan distribution. I didn't know how to feel. He wasn't just talking about the tech. He was talking about me. For the first time, someone was acknowledging something that felt real, something that mattered. And for the first time, my dad was silent, completely still. His eyes were locked on me, but there was no judgment, no lecture, just quiet. Like he was trying to remember when I stopped being the disappointment. He had to dig into his memory, look at me like I was someone he didn't quite recognize anymore. Then the questions started. My uncle leaned in with a grin. Got any investment tips? My mom, ever the voice of reason, added, You always loved puzzles, Warren. You were always good at figuring things out. I didn't respond to any of it. Didn't need to. I just sat there, watching them scramble to rewrite the story of who I was, trying to piece together an image they could hold on to. They were finally seeing me, but I didn't need them to see me for what they thought I should be. What mattered now was that they were seeing me at all. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a text from Mom. We need to talk. Brunch at 10, W Hotel. I didn't hesitate. I knew what was coming. I wasn't going for them. I was going for closure. No illusions about that. I showed up early, walked into the lobby, and spotted them already seated by the window. Dad in his leather watch, blazer perfectly pressed. Mom in pearls, posture straight as a ruler, like she was ready to dissect me under a microscope. Sit down, Warren, she said, before I even made it to the chair, her tone calm but pointed. I took a breath and sat. The usual quiet tension hung in the air. This wasn't about small talk or catching up. This was business. Business on their terms. "Why didn't you tell us?" Mom asked, cutting straight to it, her voice holding that clipped, businesslike edge she used when she expected answers. "We could have helped." I almost laughed, but I kept it in check. I wasn't sure if she meant it, or if this was just her way of trying to reclaim control of the narrative. "You told me to apply for a dispatcher job when I said I was working on a platform," I said, the words coming out sharper than I intended. Dad's hand tightened around his coffee cup. He flinched just slightly, his eyes flicking down to the table, like I'd hit him with a physical blow. I could feel the weight of the years of silence between us, pressing down on the moment. "We just didn't understand," Dad muttered. "You weren't following a stable path." I let that hang in the air for a second, letting his words echo in my mind. "No," I finally said, leaning in just a little. "I wasn't following your path. That didn't make mine unstable. There it was, the line that had been drawn years ago, the one I never wanted to cross but finally did. The one that said I wasn't their version of success. I wasn't their neat little package with a clear title and a predictable career trajectory. I was something else, and I was tired of pretending I wasn't. The silence that followed wasn't as thick as the one I'd lived with for years, but it still weighed heavy. They didn't know what to say next. Neither of them did. After a beat, Dad cleared his throat. "So, tell us, how did you get started?" For the first time, he wasn't asking in a dismissive way. It was more like genuine curiosity. It felt like we were meeting somewhere in the middle, at least for a moment. I sighed, the frustration and years of holding back still simmering beneath the surface. But I let it go. Ivan and we started small. The first office was a trailer near Reno. We were scraping by, doing odd jobs just to keep the servers running. A lot of people thought we were just messing around, but we stuck with it. Mom's eyes softened, just slightly. She didn't interrupt. Neither of them did. "We built TransCore on a shoestring budget," I continued. "No fancy investors, no press releases. We just worked day and night, trying to make something that worked, something real." Dad leaned forward a little, tapping his fingers on his coffee cup. He wasn't interrupting this time, just listening. I think he actually wanted to understand. "And the fleet tracking?" he asked, like he was trying to get into the specifics of what I'd been doing all this time. "How's your system handle that?" I stared at him for a second, surprised by the question. It was the first time in years he'd asked me about the work, like I was more than just the guy who'd never quite measured up. "We optimize routes, manage delivery windows, minimize deadhead miles. It's all about reducing inefficiencies. The more data we collect, the smarter the system gets." Mom nodded slowly. "That sounds impressive." She didn't say it like she was just being polite. She actually seemed to mean it, and that was it. That was the moment when I realized something. The conversation wasn't about fixing me or apologizing. It wasn't about them telling me they were proud, or that they understood. It was about them finally listening. Not because they had to, but because they wanted to. I didn't feel the need to prove anything anymore. I could tell my story without trying to convince them it was worth hearing. We spent the next hour talking, mostly about the early years, about the struggles Ivan and I had faced, how we managed to scrape through when everything was stacked against us. My parents asked questions, they made a few comments, but it wasn't awkward or forced. They weren't trying to control the conversation or steer it to where they wanted it to go. They were just listening. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't waiting for them to fix me. I didn't need them to. This was my path now. No applause, just a quiet understanding. We walked out of there with no promises made, but there was something different. A shift, maybe. A crack in the wall that had been there for far too long. A few nights later, Paige showed up unannounced. She knocked once, then let herself in, holding a bottle of bourbon like it was a peace offering. She had that look on her face, like she owed me something. She didn't wait for me to say anything. "I should have known," she said, her voice low, almost like she was speaking to herself more than to me. "But I assumed you were just doing odd jobs or working the docks." I didn't say anything at first. I didn't need to. I just let her words hang in the air. She wasn't wrong. I hadn't exactly been clear about what I was doing. "I let you assume," I replied, finally breaking the silence. She bit her lip, then sighed, like a weight was lifting. "Still," she continued, "I believed what Mom and Dad believed, that you'd lost your way. Turns out you were just building something they couldn't see." I took a breath. My chest was tight, but I didn't feel angry. Not anymore. "I get it," I said. She nodded like she finally understood that I wasn't mad at her. Not for what she'd said, not for what she'd believed. We both just wanted to be seen. I poured us each a drink and we walked out to the back porch. It was a quiet night. No traffic sounds, just the distant hum of the city and the occasional chirp of crickets. We sat there, both staring at the empty space between us. The glass in our hands, the only thing keeping the silence from suffocating. "I'm sorry," she said after a minute. Her voice was quieter than usual, vulnerable in a way I hadn't expected. I was the golden kid. I didn't look around. I didn't need to ask her what she meant. I could see it in the way she'd always carried herself, like she had to be perfect to be enough. It wasn't her fault. She'd done what they expected, like we all had. She'd never seen the cracks in the picture. I took a sip of bourbon, letting the warmth settle in. "I get it," I said again. "You weren't supposed to. That's how they raised us. They put us in our roles, told us who to be." She looked at me, really looked at me, like she was seeing me for the first time. "I should have seen you earlier. I should have known." I shook my head, because it didn't matter anymore. The time that had passed, the distance, it was all just part of the story now. "Doesn't matter," I said, quieter this time. "It's over." We raised our glasses, a small clink in the silence between us. She wasn't asking for forgiveness, and I wasn't offering it. We were both just there. It wasn't about making up for anything, not really. It was about letting go of the weight that had been holding us both down. We sat there for hours, talking. No drama, no yelling. Just real words for once. About how we'd both gotten lost in our own ways, how we'd followed paths we weren't sure were ours. And in the end, it was the kind of conversation I never thought we'd have. But it was the one that mattered most. The night stretched on, the sky turned darker, the stars coming out one by one. We didn't need to say much after that. That night meant more to me than anything that had happened at the dinner. 6 months later, the Stratnex deal closed. We didn't sell. We merged on our terms. They wanted our platform, we wanted their resources. It was a clean deal, no strings attached. Ivan's now the CTO of the expanded division, running the tech side, just like he should be. And me, I'm leading North American operations. My office overlooks downtown Denver, the skyline stretching out before me every morning. Paige sends me articles now, ones she actually reads. She'll shoot me a link with a "this reminds me of you" text. I never thought I'd get that from her, but here we are. Mom mailed me a framed front page piece from Industry Weekly, a photo of TransCore's growth. There was a post-it attached. "Proud, finally understand this one." I'm sure it meant something to her, but I wasn't waiting for her approval anymore. Not really. Then there was Dad. Out of nowhere, he called and asked if I'd present at a conference he chairs. The old me would have said no, maybe even resented the idea. But I said yes, not for him, for the 21-year-old me that they never saw. The one who was always trying to prove something, trying to be something they could respect. That kid deserved to stand there. I host quarterly meetups now too, small gatherings of young guys trying to break into logistics tech. I tell them the same thing every time. Don't wait for applause. Don't wait for recognition. Build anyway. Last week, a new hire asked me, "Do you wish they'd believed in you sooner?" I thought about it for a second before I answered. "Would have made things easier," I said. "But I'd be softer. Building alone hardens you, makes you unshakable."